UFO world has seen some crazy things this week, and I kid you not. So we've got Jake Barber, who is a UFO whistleblower, coming out with some bombshell claims. I like to, sparingly use that word, but I think it's warranted. Then you've got Dr. Stephen Greer sharing some information that he's learned regarding the bogusphere. Then you've got Ross Coulthart getting some bombshell claims. There's a lot of bombshells this week, ladies and gentlemen. And then Anna Paulina Luna has absolutely dominated the headlines in the UFO sphere with regards to her upcoming UAP hearing this September. And we've had the likes of her doing all sorts of stuff. Then we've got her up against Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. And then we've got her basically exposing a lot of stuff, especially with the 3-Eye Atlas and also some revelations with David Grush. So let's start off with Jake Barber. A brand new interview with UFO whistleblower Jake Barber has just dropped, and it's filled with, wait for it, bombshells. I used it. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot me. I've used the word. So the recent interview released on the August the 31st of 2025, featuring UFO whistleblower, of course, Jake Barber, alongside investigative journalist Dennis Arsberg, I hope I've pronounced that right, and astronomer, Dr. Beatrice Villarroel. I've butchered that. I do apologise. Now, the discussion took place in Stockholm, Sweden, and was hosted by Arsberg, with Villarroel joining as a guest expert, and it is a deep dive conversation focusing on Barber's experiences with UAPs, crash retrieval operations, and broader implications for disclosure, consciousness, and non-human intelligence. Now, like I say, it's kind of caught people by surprise because, no, it's not really, but Jake Barber obviously came out on the Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell. No, that was Matthew Brown. No, Jake Barber came out before that. Now, obviously, he's just a little bit of information on Jake Barber, right? He is a former US Air Force airman and government contractor who first gained prominence earlier in 2025 as a UAP whistleblower on crash retrieval programs. Now, he's claimed to have participated in secret operations retrieving non-human craft and materials, including the notable white egg-shaped object, which he described as an SUV-sized and anomalous in appearance, and an 8-gon octagonal craft. Barber leads a private initiative called Skywatcher, a Silicon Valley-backed program aimed at tracking and interacting with UAPs using advanced tech combined with psionic methods. His earlier interviews with Ross Coulthart on News Nation, that's where I knew him from, and with Jesse Michaels later in January, detailed emotional and telepathic experiences during retrievals, health effects like radiation exposure leading to hair loss and skin issues, and backing from military veterans like Fred Baker and John Blitch. These claims have been investigated by the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, though official responses emphasize no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial programs that have been found. Shock, horror. Now, Barber's story has polarized the UFO community. Supporters view him as a credible source due to corroboration from decorated veterans and his willingness to testify under oath, while skeptics question the lack of clear evidence, for example, just blurry videos, and elements of psionic items involving predisposed individuals, for example, children, women, left-handed gay men with heightened psychic potential. A forensic psychologist reportedly assessed him as truthful in separate analysis, leading to a lot of intrigue. So that's a bit of a background. It was Matthew Brown that I was thinking of that came out on Weaponized. Obviously, Jay Barber came out earlier this year and followed that kind of David Grush route of going through News Nation and Ross Coulthart. Now, the interview that he did on August 31st basically builds on Barber's prior disclosures, but delves deeper into personal, philosophical, and scientific angles, which is facilitated by the two other people that he did it with in the name of Dennis Arsberg and Dr. Beatrice. Now, Dr. Dennis Arsberg, is a Swedish journalist and UFO researcher known for probing UAP topics, and he acts as a primary interviewer, steering the conversation towards Barber first-hand accounts and challenging him on specifics. Whereas Dr. Beatrice is a respected astronomer leading the Vasco project, searching for extraterrestrial artifacts via astronomical surveys and involved in exoprobe initiatives. And her presence adds a scientific lens, discussing the potential of observational data and conscious materials on retrieved craft. So that's basically the idea of the interview, and it's led to some very, very punchy and interesting moments. Obviously, within the 2-hour interview, there are some good little clips like this one right here.
And the egg was a unique experience because it was a highly sensitive operation that turned out to be a crash retrieval of a non-human craft, and that was the egg, which literally looked like an egg, like a chicken egg, except it was shiny and it was on the ground when I got there. So my primary role in crash retrievals is that of a helicopter pilot. So I was operating a helicopter that night when I got dispatched to retrieve the egg with a long line system and a remote hook, as we call it. It's usually a 150 foot to 200-foot long line that hangs below the aircraft. And I flew in that night with that long line system and came over the hill and saw a shiny, like metallic white egg on the ground and hooked it up and flew it to another secure location where it was offloaded. And that experience was something that stuck with me.
Is it dangerous to go close to it?
Is it dangerous? Well, some there are there are records within the crash retrieval program of there being side effects or medical conditions associated with those who have recovered craft from the ground or even in the air. I'm one of those myself. And this gets confused a lot in the public that has seen some of my podcasts or some of the coverage of some of the conversations I've had like this. There were two objects that I am talking about publicly. One is the egg. The other is what we call was an eight-gon, or it's basically a flying disc with 8 delineated sections. When viewed from above, it looked like a craft, a flying saucer, but it wasn't smooth. It had 8 sections. It was very dark. And by the time I was over the object, flying, trying to lift it off the ground, I was in tears. I didn't know if I thought maybe someone had drugged me or I was having an emotional breakdown of some kind from just stress, cortisol. And it took everything I got to fly and pick this load up and fly away. I slowly kind of exposed my family to this idea, to this worldview over time. We've always held that in our household, like especially with my children. I've talked about it that way. And so I think they're oriented, at least within my household and my circle of friends, they are oriented towards this becoming a reality, but they didn't know the extent to which I was involved. And so, especially within my immediate family, they didn't want me to come forward. And it took a long time. Like Ross and I were working together for over 2 years before I came out. And at first I was like, there's no way. But I wanted to find a way to help because of friends like David Grush, who had stuck his neck out and was out there on a limb, and he wasn't getting much support. And so I wanted to find a way forward for him. And I just had to assure my family that I didn't have a choice, that I had an obligation, and that I'd done my best to ensure that it was going to be okay for us. There was the surprise and the embarrassment because I knew there was going to be backlash. Yeah. And it's tough on your kids too, because your face is going to become known and they're going to be, oh, there's that guy that I saw on YouTube. And most of my life was spent very private and very secretive. And there's no benefit for us, for my family, for being known. Like we have worked really hard and have become very stable financially, very stable socially. And there was only the possibility for loss in this. It was an act of service, and it was something that I knew I had a piece of the puzzle, and that puzzle needed to be completed because I was leaving other good Americans hanging out there that had come forward.
Okay.
And so I I focused on that while in the short term, my family may be very angry at me, in the long term, they would be proud of what I did, that I came forward and I did the right thing. And especially for my teenage daughter, it was really rough. Um, but when I knew that when she grew older, that I'd hoped that she would look back and understand that it was a moral obligation and that it was an act of virtue and bravery that motivated me to come out. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things from this is obviously, you know, seeing the emotion behind coming out as a whistleblower. That's not something that we typically see from these people. Obviously, we know that there's backlash. We've seen it with Stephen Greer. We've seen it with David Grush. We've seen it with X, Y, and Z. But you don't really hear them from an emotional standpoint. You know, say, my family in the short term are angry with me, but I hope that in the long run they can see that what I did was selfless, or as selfless as I could be, right? And that's obviously quite hard hitting. That's quite an impactful statement. Those are just some of the kind of key highlights. If you go over to YouTube and you type in literally Jake Barber interview, it's one of the first ones that pops up. It is on Dennis Arsberg's YouTube channel, so you can check that out for yourself. It's well over 2 hours long, so if you've got time on your hands, I do recommend that you go and give it a listen. Some of the things and some of the talking points were quite interesting. But what do you guys make of this? I know that a lot of people are going to say that Jake Barber's not credible, that his video's been debunked countless times, that, you know, he's just doing it for the fame and the fortune, like Lou Elizondo, for example. Or people will liken him to Lou Elizondo because that's kind of the narrative that Lou Elizondo's got recently. It's a very tricky one. Then it was known that Dr. Stephen Greer and his team had a hold of the bogusphere, obviously, which is currently in the possession of Jaime Maussan, and he was able to perform some basic studies to it, and there's going to be more studies to come. Of all the UAP topics to captivate us this year, nothing has really caught us or our attention more than that of the bogosphere that has come out of Colombia. Now, obviously, this object right now is in the possession of Jaime Maussan, the Mexican scientist, I suppose, who presented the alien bodies in front of the Mexican Congress back in 2024, I think it was. And, you know, it's been widely discussed. A lot of people like Jesse Michaels, who of course has got his own podcast over on YouTube, has discussed it. And also Dr. Stephen Greer has had his, you know, fair share of attention shared towards this. And he's come out with some very insane claims recently regarding it. Now, in case you haven't seen the bogosphere, obviously, I mean, I don't know how you could have missed it, but just to catch you up, this is a stabilized version of the footage of the alleged sphere that was captured over Colombia earlier this year.
En primera instancia, el arquitecto Josué Hernández logró estabilizar la toma y con el auxilio de inteligencia artificial logró definir claramente a la esfera. Esto permitió determinar que ésta gira. La velocidad es tal que incluso no permite observar los elementos grabados en su estructura. Asimismo, observe cómo brilla en la parte superior y en la zona baja refleja el ambiente que se encuentra en la superficie. El arquitecto Josué Hernández así describió lo que encontró en este análisis de inteligencia artificial.
Con esta estabilización logramos hacer un mejoramiento con inteligencia artificial para tratar de ver si giraba o si habían detalles que nos habíamos perdido con el movimiento. También aumentamos los cuadros por segundo a 120 cuadros por segundo y la velocidad la hicimos a la mitad de lo que era la original. Todo esto para poder ver el detalle de lo que es esta extraña esfera que nos presentaron en video.
Now, I believe this footage came directly from an interview that was talking about the bogosphere from the people that are currently in possession of it, who have basically micro-analyzed this footage to make sure it's not being doctored, to make sure it's not being edited, AI generated, all the rest of it. And it all came back clear. All right, and obviously there's been a lot discussed with regards to the bogosphere with, its makeup, its inscribings around the edge of it, how it's changed in mass and density, but it hasn't changed in size, and it changes with hot and cold temperatures. You know, there's a lot that's gone on. But like I say, Dr. Stephen Greer has analysed it, and there's been some interesting things that have come back. Now, it's really interesting. So, obviously, Stephen Greer is a prominent figure within the UFO community, and he's made several assertions about the bogosphere. So there's personal examination. So Greer claims that he personally examined the sphere and found it to have unique internal structures, including a carbon-based polymer and fiber optic light channels, which he believes are not of human origin, highlighting the not of human origin part, as it kind of plays into this narrative that it could possibly be of extraterrestrial origin. Now, there was also sample collection, so his team allegedly took metal and polymer samples from the sphere to for further analysis, including advanced testing methods like carbon-14 dating and oxygen isotope analysis to determine the age of the material and composition. Now, this has come under some heavy scrutiny, of course, because people have wondered how you carbon date metal. I don't believe it's a possibility. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments, but based off of what I've seen, I don't think you can carbon date metal. I'm yet to be, correct me if I'm wrong. And then there's also the global phenomenon. So Greer suggests that multiple similar spheres are appearing worldwide, possibly indicating a broader phenomenon linked to the profound shift in consciousness on Earth. Now, yeah, there is, with regards to the validity of extraterrestrial origin, we'll kind of get into that in a moment. But this is kind of part of an interview of the most recent interview that's come out with regards to the bogosphere.
Video up about, we were about to, I'd just taken a member of Congress from the House Oversight Committee to Mexico City, where this sphere... I
was going to ask you, the bogosphere.
The bogosphere, which was landed in Colombia, South America, near a little town called Buga, B-U-G-A. And the bogosphere was then brought to Mexico City, and it's about this big. It almost certainly is of non-human origin. And I've examined it. I went there with a whole team of scientists. We took metal samples, all kinds of things.
What was it like? If you examined it, did you actually get to touch this thing, or?
Oh yeah, I held it, examined it. We took metal samples. We took some samples of some polymer material that were in some of the hole, the sort of where the fiber optics come out around the equator of it. You can put it up on the screen as I'm describing it. What you're going to see there, what we're wanting to do is carbon-14 dating on the polymer material that are in those little holes around the equator of the sphere. But we also took metal shavings from inside one of those tiny 4-millimeter openings where the fiber optics or sensors are. And we're trying to get those analyzed. Now, we haven't quite set the lab testing up, but we're planning to get that done in the next few months so that we can find out, is the metal from Earth or from outer space? There are tests we can do to do that. And the carbon-14 dating would tell us how old it is. Is it something that's 5 years old or 4,000 years old, right? We don't know. The way when I examined it and I saw the CAT scans and x-rays and all the other tests that have been done in Mexico City, I have very little doubt that it's of non-human origin. Now, the question is, why are all these starting to fly around? Because there are multiple of them being seen all over the world. And they seem to be getting activated because I think we're coming up against some big changes with the Earth. That's my theory. Not to spook people, but that's what I think is happening.
Well, that's something we talk about in the spiritual circles. A shift in consciousness, some big change of humanity, and that's kind of overlapping. I'd like you, if you can go down that road in a minute, and I'd like to know, is this a chicken and the egg scenario, or is this consciousness itself revealing what needs to be revealed to help us in this shift?
Obviously, very bold claims there to claim that he's confident that this is not of human origin, all right? And he doesn't specifically say, yes, it's alien, yes, it's extraterrestrial, yes, it's come from space, but, not of human origin would indicate those kinds of things. There are, arguments to be made that it could have been made on this planet by something that's not human. that we're not aware of, and it's been, put out into the world and it's been caught. Now, the validity of extraterrestrial origin obviously is still massively up in the air, and I think Dr. Stephen Greer, unfortunately, is one of those divisive figures that even if he said and slapped us with evidence that it may not be created by humans, people would probably still scoff at it, spit on it, and, crack on and be like, you're nut jobs. Now, there are supporting claims, obviously, from Dr. Stephen Greer that, maybe it's not of human origin, like the unique materials and structures, so the presence of materials and structures not matching known human technology, such as carbon-based polymer and fiber optic channels, could suggest an extraterrestrial origin if these claims are substantiated by rigorous scientific analysis. There's also advanced testing, so obviously, like he stated there, the carbon-14 dating and oxygen isotope analysis, which could potentially provide evidence of the sphere's age, and obviously the global sightings as well, so it's being seen more globally than just in Colombia. Now, there are some skeptical sides to this, obviously. Like, I like to look on both sides of the coin, the pros and the cons. Now, the skeptical perceptions are that, there is a lack of peer-reviewed evidence right now. There's no peer-reviewed scientific evidence currently, other than, people like Jesse Michaels going in, Dr. Stephen Greer going in, other, people in the UFO space kind of going in, but not like this broader non-UFO based scientific origin people to date this stuff. There's also potential human fabrications. So some researchers like cognitive neuroscientist and UAP researcher Diana Pasolka have expressed skepticism, suggesting the sphere might be made by human artifact or an art project rather than an extraterrestrial object. Obviously, that's a possibility that's been thrown around. And also, security and credibility concerns. So incidents like the alleged attempt to by fake policemen to steal the sphere raises questions about the security and evidence of the credibility of the narrative surrounding it. Obviously, these things are always going to be met with a bit of resistance, and it's just whether it can weather the storm and whether these people can weather the storm. Some people swear by what Dr. Stephen Greer says. Some people wouldn't even give him an ounce of time. I guess it's just where you sit on that fence. But what do you guys think about this? Does this add weight and credibility to the bogosphere potentially being extraterrestrial, or are we no further forward? Obviously, we're lacking any evidence to support these claims. It's just a man saying, I strongly believe that this is not of non-human origin. I like to see a smoking gun, personally. I like to base my opinions on evidence as opposed to hearsay. So I'm going to hold judgment, but what do you guys think? Then we had the big news that there will be a UAP hearing this September, and it's going to be spearheaded by Eric Burleson, Tim Burchett, and Anna Paulina Luna, all representatives of Congress, of course, who have, very much been involved with the topic so far. But it wasn't as easy as everyone seems. Dare I say it, we've got bombshell news coming out of Ross Coulthart right now. I said it. So it's come from a former Army senior intelligence officer by the name of Kazan Best. Right now, he's come out to talk about a UAP incident that he actually witnessed firsthand. Now, I've got to say, in classic Ross Coulthart fashion right now with the reality check, it is just the account. It is just the whistleblower who has come forward, not the actual evidence. So before you think that there's going to be evidence of any UAP craft or things like this from this video, no chance. It's not happening. It's just an account. But sometimes that's a bit better than absolutely now. So in early 2022, former Army senior intelligence officer Kazan Best and 4 colleagues witnessed a UAP near Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado, a highly sensitive military installation housing NORAD and other critical defense operations. Now, according to reports, Best was on his way to an intelligence meeting when the UAP, described as a massive white object, appeared in restricted airspace. Best filed a formal intelligence report with corroborating witness accounts the following day, but he encountered indifference and dismissive responses from official channels, with reporting pathways seemingly suppressed. Now, in an episode of the Reality Check with Ross Coulthart, which aired on September 2nd of 2025, Best discussed his sighting, highlighting the lack of institutional response to such events over sensitive sites. Coulthart, who is of course an investigative journalist known for his work on UAPs, has reported on similar claims, emphasizing the need for transparency regarding such phenomena just like this. Now, by 2023, Best connected with Americans for Safe Aerospace, otherwise known as the ASA, which is a non-profit focused on UAP research, and by 2024, he was leading their reporting program, processing nearly 800 reports and interviewing over 50 credible witnesses, including aviators and intelligence officers. Now, this incident underscores ongoing concerns about institutional handling of UAP reports and the need for better reporting mechanisms, as highlighted by Best's experience in ASA's efforts. No verifiable evidence confirms the nature of the UAP, and the Pentagon has consistently denied claims, of course, of extraterrestrial activity and secret retrieval programs, and the sighting remains unexplained with no public disclosure for further investigation or investigation outcomes, right? So essentially, you know, this guy's come out, the Pentagon have said, yeah, it's a load of shit, and then he's basically gone to Ross Coulthart to talk to him about his account. Now, obviously, that's actually arguably better than nothing. A lot of people will claim that, you know, what was the point? I think the argument isn't what was the point. I think it should be, well, at least we've got something, because that's better than nothing. Because at the moment we're running on empty, ladies and gentlemen. So let's have a little listen to the reports to begin with.
And when we got to the top of the hill, already over the mountain and kind of naturally in our field of view, when we got to that location, was the UAP. It's hard to describe. Even now, just a few years later, it was unlike anything that I frankly could have made up, and I'm not the most creative person, but it was a massive, perfectly still elliptical object, and the stillness was just shocking. Like it was almost tied to a fixed point in space. I would guess maybe 300 feet at least. Elliptical like this, white in color, comprised of these uniform panels that seemed to be all pentagons, but were all irregularly shaped. They were joined at the seams, you know, the linear seams, and these irregularly shaped but, you know, uniform in area pentagonal panels were like a mother of pearl or a white ceramic color. And it was a perfect sunny Colorado bluebird day, 50 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, and you could see these panels move as they kind of glisten in the sun. And again, they were kind of seamed at the linear edges of all of them. It was in a pattern that just did not make sense. You could see the panels that comprise the objects kind of rippling. You could see the edges of the object like move as the panels rippled. But the object itself was perfectly stationary. It was a humbling experience. I mean, this object was just so unlike anything I could have ever imagined. Like, I can relate to the whole thought process of being a caveman and seeing an iPhone for the first time. It was just a shocking object. Just the engineering of it was incredible. Like, this thing was beautifully designed, but almost incomprehensible.
Now, obviously, it's quite a compelling testimony, quite a compelling retelling of what took place. At the top, I think someone's obviously AI generated what looks to be what is described. Now, obviously, it's quite beautiful looking, actually. If this is kind of what he saw and what the other people and other witnesses saw, it is quite beautiful. You can imagine that kind of glistening off the sun. So obviously this came from the full episode of the Reality Check. So former senior intelligence officer finds UAP by Colorado Defense bunker. So in this episode of Reality Check, Ross Coulthart sits down with the former Army intelligence officer Casey Best in early 2022. Best was on his way to an intelligence meeting, like we've already stated. And Coulthart and Best discuss what UAP could have been, Arrow's unprofessionalism, and when Best reached out to his to share his report, and Ryan Graves' special assistance. Now, obviously it's an interesting one because this isn't the first time. This isn't the first time that we've had these kinds of reports be dismissed by higher ups when that's supposed to allegedly be the way in which the way in which it's supposed to be handled. Now, Ross Coulthart does ask a very interesting question because, of course, the UAP congressional hearings are taking place very soon. It's been confirmed. I mean, people were trying to say that they've been called off, but Representative Luna, who is really pushing them, has stated that they are not, in fact, off. So Ross Coulthart asked, would he be willing to testify in front of Congress under oath? Because obviously, that's the greatest way that you could testify. And this is his answer.
If you were asked.
Yeah, we have provided evidence to several committees. We continue to do so as of recent as well, and I am happy to testify.
Are you being asked to testify at the forthcoming September hearing?
Not to my knowledge.
But there are people like you and many of the people in the wings at ASA who are former serving military, often at very high levels, who are willing to testify about the anomalous phenomena that they've witnessed.
I can't speak for others. I would like to think so. This subject is one where there's not much personal gain involved. So it does require a level of what I think is courage to do what you think or compelled to think is the right thing. I'm happy to do so, and I hope others are as well.
Well, Cason Best, former Captain Cason Best of the US Army Special Forces, I, for one, want to commend you for your courage and thank you very, very much for speaking to Reality Check.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Interesting towards the end there. So, I mean, like I say, no evidence to support or corroborate the incident. It's one of those things. Should we expect evidence at this point? I don't know. It's hard, man. It's hard because testimonies are one thing, evidence is another. Everyone wants the smoking gun. No one wants to provide the smoking gun right now. And this is kind of where scrutiny comes to Ross Coulthart at the moment, because he was a man who would not deliver a story without corroborating evidence. But now it seems that you don't need to have corroborating evidence to necessarily get on the reality check. And I'm just echoing what other people have said. Don't shoot the messenger, ladies and gentlemen.
The dispatcher gets a call from range control, a technical sergeant from range control, and he says, I'm reporting an event that occurred at LF-21 and LF-10, two different sites in the same location. And what he said was the contractors working on site called range control, and he said there was a gigantic floating red square over LF-21 at low altitude, and they were just standing there watching this thing.
Red square. So
red square.
One thing that people have asked me after I spoke about this case at the hearing was, what does that mean, a red square? Right? Was this a cube? Did it not look like it had depth, and so it's described as a square? I said square in the hearing because that's how it was described to me, just as you described it. And I'm curious if you have any additional details that you could add. Was it a three-dimensional object? Did it just appear to be a square and it just couldn't tell?
We've got some huge news regarding some crazy things going on that are going to be happening in September for the UAP community, right? So it's been confirmed that there will be a UAP hearing this September. This was touted to be off, and then it was on, and then it was off, but it's been confirmed by Representative Anna Paulina Luna that there will be a hearing next Tuesday on September 9th, 2025 at 10 a.m. That'll probably be, American time. And it's going to be a big deal because you're going to be able to watch it on X and you're going to be able to watch it on YouTube. And we've had the people that will be speaking and testifying in front of Congress confirmed. So this is pretty big. So obviously, this was all over the place. Anna Paulina Luna got into another spat online with someone regarding whether it was on or off, but she's confirmed that it is going to be on. Task Force and the Declassification of Federal Secrets Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, UAP hearing, restoring public trust through UAP transparency and whistleblower protection, September 9th, 2025, 10 a.m, US Capitol Visitor Center, room HVC 210. Watch it on X and on YouTube. And then she shared a little document about it as well. Now, this is quite a big deal. Representative Eric Burleson, who of course is being advised by David Grush at the moment, has also confirmed that the hearing will be taking place. And also, quotations, restoring public trust through UAP transparency and whistleblower protection. Now, this is quite a big deal, ladies and gentlemen, because that is the tagline for this one. Restoring trust in government, essentially, right? Restoring trust through UAP transparency. That's the big tagline that they're really going for. Now, Luna announces hearing on transparency related to unidentified anomalous phenomena. Washington Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets Chairwoman Anna Paulina Luna today announced the hearing on restoring public trust through transparency and UAP protection. During the hearing, members will hear from witnesses on the continued concerns regarding the disclosure of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, and information held by federal agencies, and will examine transparency issues surrounding the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. Members will also analyze the work and effectiveness of the DoD's congressionally mandated All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is pretty big as well, actually. But the Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets hearing, titled Restoring, we know that it's going to happen next Tuesday, 10 a.m. EST, location, as we know. And these are the witnesses that are going to be coming forward. So we've got Jeffrey Nicatelli, a U.S. Air Force veteran, Chief Alexandre Wiggins, a UAP witness, George Knapp, a UAP journalist, Dylan Borland, a UAP witness, U.S. Air Force veteran. Now, obviously, it's also all about whistleblower protection, because one thing that we've seen with regards to these UAP congressional hearings is that the whistleblowers that come forward, tend to get kind of washed out. They are usually threatened, they're, not looked after. But a little bit more on the people that are going to be taking part in this. So we've obviously got George Knapp. Now, we know George Knapp, he's the mentor to Jeremy Corbell. He's a renowned, obviously, investigative journalist based in Las Vegas, working on the chief investigative reporter for the Class TV. And he's a prominent figure in UFO and UAP research. Now, we all know a lot about George Knapp already. I'm sure I don't really need to go into too much detail. But we've also got Chief Alexandre Wiggins. So, Wiggins was a 23-year U.S. Navy veteran and Senator Chief of Operations Specialist, recognized for his expertise in radar operations. In 2023, in February, while serving as a radar specialist on the USS Jackson, Wiggins witnessed a significant UAP incident off the California coast. He observed multiple tic-tac-shaped objects emerging from the ocean, displaying advanced flight capabilities with no visible propulsion or thermal signatures. Using the ship's Sapphire thermal system, Wiggins and his team detected 4 objects which moved instantaneously to the northeast, an event that he described as quote-unquote 2 steps behind instantaneous. His account has been corroborated by Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, adding credibility to the incident's significance. And as we know, Tim Gallaudet was also part of the last UAP hearing. Then we've got Jeffrey Nicatelli. So Jeffrey Nicatelli is a U.S. Air Force veteran and former security officer who has become prominent in the UAP space as a witness and disclosure advocate. And a bit more about his incidents. And Nicatelli is known for his first account of investigating a large, glowing, quote-unquote, red square UAP incident in the Vandenberg Air Force Base. The object hovered silently with no heat signature and was witnessed by as many as 80 personnel. Now, a little bit more about his incident right here when he spoke on the Merged podcast.
About 8:45 in the morning, the dispatcher gets a call from range control, a technical sergeant from range control, and he says, I'm reporting an event that occurred at LF-21 and LF-10, 2 different sites in the same location. And what he said was the contractors working on site called range control, and he said there was a gigantic floating red square over LF-21 at low altitude, and they were just standing there watching this thing.
A red square. So
red square.
One thing that people have asked me after I spoke about this case at the hearing was, what does that mean, a red square? Right? Was this a cube? Did it not look like it had depth, and so it's described as a square? I said square in the hearing because that's how it was described to me, just as you described it. And I'm curious if you have any additional details that you could add. Was it a three-dimensional object? Did it just appear to be a square, and it just couldn't be? You couldn't tell.
So here's the issue. I had the original statement from the contractors. There were 3 contractors that worked for Boeing that saw this object, and they wrote sworn written statements. I've lost those. I lost them in 2012. I have some other statements, but those are indirect witness statements from it. But from my recollection of reading the documents, to the best of my recollection, it was a somewhat flattened square plane, and basically just a big square object, the size of a football field, silently floating over the launch pad. Wow. Red in color, glowing this red color. So as far as I know, it wasn't a cube. It was like a flattened square.
Got it.
So that's one of the people that will be testifying in front of Congress, and that was Jeffrey Nicatelli. We've also got Dylan Borland as well, who will also be testifying. Now, Borland is a US Air Force veteran and confirmed to be a witness for the UAP hearing, scheduled for September 9th, of course. Borland is identified as a UAP witness, but specific details about his encounter are scarce ahead of the hearing. It is anticipated that his testimony will focus on the first-hand observation or experiences with UAPs during his Air Force service, likely tied to his geospatial and aerial intelligence background. These encounters may involve sightings or data collection related to UAPs or unexplained or unidentified objects exhibiting advanced capabilities. Now, Borland has made a few prior public statements about his experiences, making his testimony at the 2025 September hearing potentially his first major disclosure. And this can provide new insights into how the Air Force has encountered and processed UAP events. So those are a lot of the things. So this was also the Navy Chief Alex Wiggins, as he
typical
described
day
his
underway, conducting
UAP
normal operation
encounter, right? So, you know, he's come forward previously to talk about
into
this.
the night watch. We were standing, and typical day underway, conducting normal operations off the coast of San Diego. And there was a time that I witnessed on my radar a few contacts popping up. It was northeast on the radar. The radar's in true, so northeast-ish, looking at the radar, and noticed a few things come in and out. You know, I've been in the Navy for 23 years, so as an operations specialist, so I know the difference between, you know, helicopters, which I'm a helo controller myself, with an NEC of helo control, and knowing the difference between that, commercial navigation radars, which are your typical ComNav that are, you know, going to Hawaii possibly, and then atmospherics, so things like clouds, rainstorms, things like that. You learn over, you know, the years to differentiate what's what on your radar. So that night, I noticed that I couldn't differentiate what was what at all amongst the things that I just mentioned. So I decided to go out into the bridge wing just to take a look, to see. I didn't think it was that far away. I think, you know, it's nighttime, so light travels. So I figured, you know what, let me just poke outside, see what I can see. And to my surprise, which is something I've never witnessed, was a light I noticed on the horizon, but it looked as if it were surfacing out of the water and going up. Now, seeing lights on the horizon, very typical when you're out in the water, but seeing a light on the horizon going into the air is a different story. So witnessing that, I'm not sure of what I'm seeing. what goes through my head, maybe there's you know, a military team that's out there conducting flight operations, and maybe their helos hovering, something like this, you know, but their lights blink. I'm a helo controller, so I know that their lights, their running lights are going to be blinking, red, green, and, you know, pulsating. So it's not like it's going to be a solid light, and that's what I witnessed, was a solid light rising from the horizon up. So went back inside, looked at my radar to just kind of match what I'm seeing with my own eyes, and I didn't really see what I thought I was going to see. I only saw one light visually, but then I saw 4 different contacts on radar. So seeing those 4 contacts on radar, I asked our CSM, I forget what that stands for right now, but Combat Systems, I forget the full title, but asked the CSM to take a look on Sapphire. They're in charge of managing Sapphire and moving it around, to just look at surface and air contacts around our ship. So they slew over to the location that I gave them, the direction in which I gave them, and that's where you see the video cut into play, where you see it slew into that target to kind of look at it. And you know, they're the operators, so they know how to zoom in and kind of see what the profile of the contact that we're looking at, to kind of understand, okay, if it were a ComNav radar, which is a typical, you know, airliner 747, then we're going to say, okay, good to go. They're, you know, headed off to Hawaii or wherever, anywhere to the west.
And we also know, obviously, about George Knapp and his history of some crazy shenanigans, like him allegedly stealing the biggest UFO study in history of the world from none other than Russia. Yeah, apparently this is according to Jeremy Corbell when he spoke to, what's his name? Joe Rogan.
A ton of classified documents out of Russia himself during Glasnost and Perestroika. He went and met with the heads of the UFO programs in Russia during that time period. He came back with all those documents and actually supplied them to some people. Like that happened.
It had a lot to do with Harry Reid's decision to go ahead and support funding, because those documents show that the Russians are trying to do what we're trying to do, which is to take this stuff apart and figure out how it works.
And what year was this?
This is 1993, the first time I went. But their study lasted, they had the biggest study in the history of the world. From 78 to 88, the USSR sent out an order to every military unit in the vast Soviet Empire that any UFO, any orb, any ball of light, anything weird in the sky, all has to be investigated. And that information had to be funneled to the Ministry of Defense, to the desk of a guy named Colonel Boris Sokolov, who was in charge of this program. And I met him, and he shared a lot of that information with me. And he admitted, we're trying to figure this stuff out, because if we could duplicate that technology, we could kick your ass in terms of stealth. We could beat you at your own game on stealth technology. So they were trying to do it. They're trying to figure it out. We hear bits and pieces that they have recovered crashes as well. So do the Chinese, maybe the Israelis.
I mean, also in these documents. So, and can you tell them who you gave them to? That whole stuff. Can you tell them that?
They got into the hands of the U.S. government, and then that was after I came back from Russia the first time. I went back again in '96. A lot of the people who had been willing to talk to me during Glasnost were now afraid. They would not meet with me. The people who had gone on camera changed their tunes, because the whole country had changed in that time period. But the documents also went to OSAP. That's the program that the DIA ran. Bigelow was the contractor for it. And they hired a bunch of Russians to go through those documents, figure out the structure of the Russian UFO program, and did a lot more analysis than I could do just by myself.
And in these documents, they talked about shoot-down attempts, which is something that we'll be hearing more about over the next 15 weeks, I hope. So in Russia, they had this policy at first to engage these things, and they lost pilots.
Yeah, they had 40 different incidents during that study where Russian warplanes chased UFOs. 3 of those cases, the UFOs turned around and shot them down. They disabled the planes, and the planes crashed. 2 of those pilots died. And after the 3rd crash, the Russian Ministry of Defense put out the order, leave them alone.
So that is George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. So obviously, this is going to be a big deal for disclosure. This is going to be hopefully a big deal for whistleblowers as well, to kind of get that security and know that they're safe to come forwards. What do you guys think about this? Is this going to be a good push for UAP disclosure, or is it just going to be more of the same, where we get a lot of words but a bit of a nothing burger? On the topic of Representative Luna, she butted heads with Sean Kirkpatrick over on X this week, as he was basically putting down the UAP hearings with some very startling and very stark, messages. The UAP congressional hearings are getting spicy, and it's all kicking off between Sean Kirkpatrick, the figurehead at Arrow, the All-Domain Resolution Office, which is basically the Department of Defense's, department for UAPs, I suppose, and Representative Anna Paulina Luna. Now, these guys are supposed to be on the same side, fighting for the same thing, that is disclosure and, information and transparency to the general public. But these guys butting heads over on Twitter. And this isn't the first time that Representative Luna has been butting heads with, people within the UAP space. She recently got into a public spat with Lou Elizondo over the skiff comments and stuff like this. So, she's no pushover when it comes to this kind of thing. Now, it all kicked off, right, because Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the former director of the Pentagon's official UFO office, Arrow, has issued an offensive public statement seemingly intended to discredit congressional hearings on UAP transparency, right? So, obviously, it's all kicking off. Now, Congress has already passed the legislation mandating a GAO investigation into Arrow for failures under his leadership, and the unhinged outburst attacking potential witnesses for upcoming hearings as quote-unquote lunatics and grifters, while misrepresenting the House Oversight Committee's constitutional duty as obstruction, is deeply alarming. Now, these are Sean Kirkpatrick's comments specifically, right? So he stated, quote, "If Luna and her lunatics want to continue to parade charlatans and grifters in front of an audience to satisfy her need for playhouse politics, then the American people should demand accountability of all the wasted taxpayer money and congressional time she has derailed from more serious issues facing this country. Clearly, she has been working quietly with these pseudoscientists and attention seekers to script a hearing and then launch a surprise onto the world, possibly to distract from more likely because that's all that she's qualified to do. In the face of the international crisis, where is the accountability? Where is Doge when there's legitimate target of fraud, waste and abuse in Congress? Where is the DOJ investigation into the congressional misappropriation and corruption associated with trying to funnel money to these grifters and actively obstruct legitimate work by the DOD and IC? It's a disgrace to Congress and the US government, and it only serves to provide reality TV." Very scolding remarks from Sean Kirkpatrick there. Representative Luna did not take this lying down, as she tweeted this: "Pinocchio of Arrow." What is this, man? Like, genuinely, right? If I told you that these were two grown adults, you wouldn't believe me. This is like some playground stuff right here. Honestly, these are supposed to be like the people that are in charge of these things, and they're just online having spats at each other and, Pinocchio noses. It's borderline embarrassing at this point, if I'm perfectly honest. But, that's not where it ends, right? So this spat has been kind of going on for a little while. Obviously, the comments made by Sean Kirkpatrick really didn't exactly help. It definitely added a bit of fuel to the fire. Now, obviously, Luna is very vocal in her advocacy for greater transparency on UAPs, pushing for congressional oversight and declassification of related documents. And she's been involved in organising the UAP hearings, as we know. She's also got one obviously set up for next week, including the notable one back in 2023 with David Grush, alongside Tim Burchett, who is the representative of Tennessee. Now, Sean Kirkpatrick has obviously led Arrow until his departure and has been a central figure in the Pentagon's efforts to investigate UAPs, allegedly. He has emphasized a scientific approach to analyzing UAP reports, maintaining that Arrow's mission is to provide transparent, data-driven findings. However, Kirkpatrick has faced criticisms from some lawmakers and UAP advocates for allegedly downplaying or dismissing significant claims about UAPs, particularly those suggesting extraterrestrial origins or government cover-ups. So, you know, basically, we've got two people who claim to be fighting for the same thing. Sean Kirkpatrick on one hand, who's like, I'm doing this for the greater good, but I'm not going to tell you everything that we know. And then you got Luna, who's like, well, we want to know everything that you know, so let's be transparent and make it incredibly public and make it a spectacle. So these people are basically butting heads, and like it seems like egos are starting to clash right now. Now, obviously, the September 2025 UAP hearing is what's really kind of like sparked this little debacle online. So, obviously, Luna's posted on X confirming that hearing is still scheduled and dismissing rumours of postponement, stating UAP hearing has not been postponed. We have a great witness. Whoever is saying that this is literally making stuff up. So, the drama appears to have been sparked by the public exchange initiated by an ex-user, Middle of Mayhem, who on September 4th, 2025, asked Kirkpatrick to respond to Luna's announcement of the upcoming hearing, noting that it would be dubious UFO personalities. And Kirkpatrick's response, described as pulling no punches, indicated a sharp rebuttal, lightly criticising the inclusion of the witnesses, considered unreliable, and framing of hearing itself. So, you know, basically what we've got here is, well, what is being dubbed as, right, is transparency versus national security. So, you know, that's kind of where these two, I suppose, sit, if you want. Witness credibility is being brought into question, so by Kirkpatrick specifically. Obviously, he's labelled them as charlatans and grifters. Obviously, a grifter being a scam artist, essentially. And, you know, Luna's not taken too kindly to it. It is quite juvenile to a degree. It is kind of petty. But there was also basically issues with clearances. Luna's told Askapol, Matt Laszlo from Askapol, right? Because apparently they don't have the clearances for certain things, which they need to make sure that everything's kind of brought out into the public. So this is what Representative Luna stated on Askapol.
For next week, do we have witnesses yet for the hearing? 4. What's the focus of?
You'll see the press release.
But you guys, what do you hope? Like, is this a message to the Pentagon that you want to make with this, or is it a message to the American people?
Right now, we're also simultaneously working on getting clearances because we keep being told we don't have clearances for certain things. So, as far as we're concerned, there's other blocks that are being put up, but no matter what, our witnesses are really good. And it's just confirming what a lot of people think, so you'll have to tune in to the not canceled UAP hearing.
But like, it's not going to focus on the Wall Street Journal article on the Air Force.
You have to tune in, but there's also people that I've found that have previously worked at the State Department that put out false information and a lot of that stuff. So that's it.
Very cool. And we'll see that Tuesday morning.
You'll see the press release. It should already be out in regards to our witnesses. So I'm actually going to check on that right now.
But it'll be next Tuesday morning, isn't the hearing?
On the 9th.
Night. Cool. Thank you, ma'am.
So, there you have it. Obviously, she's fighting a bit of an uphill battle right now with regards to getting clearances, and then Sean Kirkpatrick comes in and he's trying to discredit everything before, like, you know, almost derail the situation and the hearing before it even gets started. It's a mess. And once again, keeping on the topic of Luna, she had some very interesting things to say with regards to the UAP hearing coming up, especially surrounding the people that were going to be involved, why it's been so hard to get a hearing together, and also some interesting things that were said in the skiff with UFO Whistleblower, who arguably blew the lid on everything, David Grush. The Soul Foundation has just had an incredibly interesting interview kind of video that's just gone live, and it's included Anna Paulina Luna, Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who of course is spearheading the congressional hearings for UAP and that topic. And also Avi Loeb, who's been really looking into the 3I Atlas comet that many believe to be an alien craft, hub craft, or whatever, you know, going into a quote-unquote attack position towards Earth. Though I do believe they've just found a tail to the comet, which kind of alludes to that actually being a comet. But obviously the whole situation is up in the air right now. And I feel like I'm quite, you know, I'm not very frivolous when it comes to using the bombshell term. But when it's warranted, I feel like I like to throw it in there every now and again. And I think this could warrant it, especially after the crazy things that we've heard coming out of this. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is Avi Loeb's claims versus what the actual data for the 3I Atlas actually says. Now, Avi Loeb has just dropped a take on the 3I Atlas, which, and, you know, he basically is still going with this potential idea that this is an interstellar, you know, visitor from another from another, you know what I'm trying to say.
I had actually a very brief question that I wanted to ask Representative Luna. You know, one of the interesting facts about the anomalous interstellar objects, Oumuamua and Atlas, is that they were red. Do you think that superhuman intelligence is more likely to believe in the principles of the Republican Party?
No, I think you know, when we're talking about the potential of life on other planets and in other galaxies, I don't think that there's necessarily a political loyalty there. So,
right. But at any event, so this object, 3I Atlas, aside from the fact that it was so big, and you know, that implies perhaps that it's targeting the inner solar system, has nothing to do with rocks in interstellar space. It actually moved on a trajectory that is perfectly aligned with the planets around the sun, and the likelihood of that happening at random is 1 in 500. So that's very peculiar, and it attracted my attention. And more recently, there was a plume of gas that was detected around it by several observatories, and the Webb telescope in particular, and also the Spherex Space Observatory. And they found that the composition of that plume is very different than typical comets. It's mostly carbon dioxide, 95% by mass, and only 5% water. And the very large telescope detected nickel, but no iron. And, you know, we usually separate nickel and iron in making nickel alloys industrially. Nature doesn't do that. Nickel and iron appear together. They're produced in exploding stars with comparable quantities. And in all comets in the past, we saw nickel and iron together, and here we find only nickel with an upper limit on iron. And that's another anomaly. And I simply argue that, you know, in science, we decide the nature of an object based on data, based on evidence. So let's collect as much data as possible. That's my point, because this object appears anomalous. And just like Congresswoman Luna, you know, witnesses some resistance in the political circles, I find the resistance within academia to an agnostic study of such anomalies, because, you know, the so-called comet experts, they insist they know the answer in advance. And even when there are anomalies, you know, in the case of Oumuamua, the argument was maybe it's a dark comet where you can't see the cometary tail. It's just like looking at an elephant and saying the elephant is a zebra without stripes. The stripes are used to label a zebra, to find that the animal you're looking at is a zebra. So how can they say that it must be a comet, but you don't see the cometary tail? You know, that's an oxymoron. And you know, moreover, there is a lot of resistance to discussing the possibility of us finding objects like the ones that we produced. You know, we produced a lot of space objects, and on January 2nd, there was an asteroid that was declared by the Minor Planet Center to be a near-Earth rock. And then within a day, they realized that one moves along the trajectory of the car, the Tesla Roadster car that was launched by SpaceX in 2018. And then they said, oh, no, we take it out of the catalog. The only reason they were able to do that is because we knew that humanity launched this particular object. Otherwise, they would declare it as a rock. And so we have to be careful about experts declaring things as rocks in the sky, because we produce some space objects. And the question is whether other civilizations did as well. And of course, the UAP subject is a derivative of that, because if we are visited by a technological object like 3I Atlas, it could either visit us or release some mini probes that arrive at Earth and appear as UAP. And we need to be aware of that possibility.
Well, thank you, Avi, for bringing that back to what's going on in Congress.
Now, obviously, a lot of people will hear what Avi Loeb's got to say there and just completely discredit it because they either don't like him, they don't want to listen to him, whatever the reason is, right? Regardless of the fact, you know, he makes some very interesting points, especially when it comes to the iron and nickel content of this meteor, or the comet or whatever. You know, there's a potential that there's some kind of, you know, possibly some, you know, manufacturing going on there. Now, what's even more interesting than this, right, is what Representative Anna Paulina Luna had to say, because she's basically stated that they tried to get a congressional hearing together prior to the one that's taking place this September, but they were met with a lot of pushback from whistleblowers because they didn't want to come forward because they were concerned of being killed. Those are her words, not mine. She genuinely said that whistleblowers refused to go and speak in Congress in, like, you know, under oath because they were worried about the repercussions that would have and what that would mean for them and their families. This is wild, and now it really makes sense as to why one of the taglines for this hearing is UFO whistleblower protection. Because people don't feel protected when they do this kind of thing. And they feel concerned about what the potential repercussions could possibly be.
Yeah, we had tried to get another hearing with the task force before this one. And every single witness we had reached out to said that they didn't want to testify because they were scared for their life. And these were not people that you see in the media. These were not, you know, podcasters or anyone who's made a career talking about it. These were legitimate, you know, former military and or military contractors, and they were literally afraid of being killed. And then you had David Grush tell us directly that he was actually, you know, felt in fear of his life, and some weird things had happened prior to that first hearing. And then I would encourage all of you to actually reach out to him, because even just yesterday, I actually went into the skiff with David Grush and Eric Burleson. And prior to that skiff meeting happening, there was something really bizarre that took place with David Grush, and it's being handled at the law enforcement level. But, you know, things like that happening are not normal, especially being that David Grush is currently Eric Burleson's congressional staffer. And so you're seeing a lot of stuff now flush out. And what I can tell you is we are trying to actively push to release the information that we've seen to the American people. And so, again, you know, you have this aspect of this disinformation campaign that's taking place, trying to discredit it. And I frankly don't care at this point, because what I can tell you is the people that are genuinely interested in the actual science of this, the people like Dr. Avi Loeb who actually can provide the data to back this stuff up, you know, those people know the truth. And so we're not necessarily doing this for the people on X that are trying to discredit it. We're doing for the people that are actually taking this seriously. And then also to remember, this is a very, very big deal, especially from a national security perspective. And so I've actually also had meetings with officials of foreign governments. I won't get into what those governments are, but I did ask for any information that they could share in regards to this topic. And I bring that up because the U.S. government is not the only government that has taken a particular interest in this. And there are going to be, I think there's going to be some information presented in the upcoming hearing from George Knapp on the topic. But again, you know, we've been able to branch out and talk to other governments in regards to this. So
I think what she's referring to there about the other governments is the Russian government in particular, because obviously there was a story from Jeremy Corbell on the Joe Rogan podcast, which was that George Knapp had actually like smuggled out of Russia back in like the 1980s, I think it was, some UAP documents of them reverse engineering craft. So that's obviously a big deal, and that will probably get brought up within the congressional hearing, because obviously he's going to be taking place within that. And obviously it's very interesting to hear the comments regarding David Grush, because, you know, he is the official, like, whatever you want to call him, you know, like the spokesperson or the advisor for a congressman, and his life is still in danger with regards to this because of what he did back in 2023 by coming out to talk about these things. Mind-blowing. And the fact that they got him in the skiff and he was able to state that, yeah, this has gone to a law enforcement level, like, this is serious. It's no wonder that these people don't want to come forward, and it's no wonder that there's such a roadblock when it comes to disclosure. What do you guys think of all of this? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Way down there, jump scare the hell out of that like button and subscribe. And until next time, I'll speak to you later. Peace.